So as Rebecca said, that we are not really going to do a workshop, but more of a sharing of our work. And I want to say it at the outset that given the fact that our group has been around for 5 decades now, we completed our 50th year in 2023. So it's not possible to talk about all the aspects of our work. So the presentation basically is divided into 4 larger sections. And very briefly, we'll be talking about only certain aspects of our work. And if you have any questions to sort of fill in the gaps, we are happy to answer in breakout rooms, but also in the break that we will take after the first two sessions. So I'm going to basically begin with a really sort of, a very, very brief history, like a capsule about Janam. So Janam is what you see right now on your screen is our logo. Janam is an acronym. It's a short form for Jana Natya Manch, which means people's theatre. Jana means people, and Natya means theatre, and Manch means a platform. So that's essentially what it means. And the acronym Janam also literally means the birth. So Janam is an amateur theatre group. The group was formed in 1973. It's been around for, as I said, since just give me 1 second. Sorry, it's just and we are a political theatre, activist theatre company. We do plays basically in working class areas, in areas where people live and work. Our theatre is we are very clear about it, that our theatre has been always a very partisan. We do talk about issues that are larger concerns of the working population in India. We are based in New Delhi, but we perform in Delhi, also on the outskirts, in the National Capital Region. But we have also performed all over, many parts, not all over, but many parts of India. And in some instances, we have also performed. We have been invited by some of our friends or comrades or sympathizers in other parts of the world as well. So this logo, actually, I wanted to show this logo. Priyanka, can you go back? And on the right hand side, when you see People's Theatre Stars the People, this is actually what we really believe in. This is a slogan which was taken, which was a slogan of Indian People's Theatre Association, IPTA, which was an artist organization that with left-wing inclinations and left-wing ideology, that actually worked in the 1940s in India during the anti-British, anti-colonial struggles. And we feel that we have sort of inherited that legacy of taking theatre to people where they live and work. So when Janam started, Priyanka, you can go to the next slide. So in the beginning, in 73, when we started, a bunch of youngsters who were already working with with one of the units of IPTA in Delhi, they formed this group. And in the early days, Janam did not do street theatre from its inception. In fact, earlier our plays used to be stage plays, and they were designed for proscenium spaces, but not only in auditoriums, but usually we would go at that time to various areas and perform on makeshift stages in Delhi, but also outside Delhi in rural belts, some of the rural belts in northern India, in big and small towns, and in some cases also in villages. So our journey actually started as a group that did proscenium plays, and from between 1973 and 78, Janam produced these plays, and they performed in these working class areas. What happened, so this is one of the plays that I'm showing you. So I'm going to actually not explain all the photographs, but just to use these photographs as background, that I'm talking about as that background. So from 1973 to 1975, Janam continued to produce plays and perform, which was stage plays. But in 1973, there was this. Some of you may be aware about this, that in 1975 there was the emergency was imposed, and Brijesh in his presentation will talk a little bit in more detail about what was the political scenario in India at that time. So all the civil liberties were curbed, and many of the artists and activists from all many all other spheres, they were sort of either went underground, or many of them were also arrested and put in jail. So that was the time which was sort of, it was a dark 2 years in Indian political history. So that was the time when Janam's work was also sort of put on hold momentarily. And as soon as the emergency was lifted in 1977, earlier what used to happen is that we would be invited by local trade unions, local activist unions, to do our stage plays where their work, uh, where they were doing their grassroots work. But what happened after emergency was that it was not because the trade unions came under a severe attack, and the movement was also weakened for those particular years. So they had to actually regather a lot of strength. They had to regather their strength, their political strength, and the resources. So it was not possible for them to invite our bigger plays. So in that case, what do we do? And that was the time when we as a group thought that maybe this is the time to also reconsider our creative strategy, basically in terms of form and its content as well. So what do we do in that case? So during one of the discussions, one of our founder members, Safdar, very simply said that if we cannot take big theater to the people, then we can take small theater to the people. And that was that one line idea actually led Janam making its the street theater sort of emerged. And so given this practical need and the political scenario at that time, in 1978, Janam produced its first street play, Machine. And I'm not going to talk about the play. Brijesh will be talking about it in a bit. So for us, what happened was that as far as we were concerned, that street theater sort of became an ideological apparatus, which emerged actually directly as a response to the undemocratic subjugation of common people during the emergency, and its consequences on their lives after the emergency was lifted. So for us, the decision at that time, I would not call it an experiment in strict sense of the term, but it was the need of the hour. We wanted to go to the people, and street play being like really, Machine was only 12-13 minutes long play. So we took that play to people, and then that is the starting of our street theater journey. And in between we continued to do also proscenium plays after 1988. So till 1988, from 1978 Machine to 1988, we continued for 10 years making street plays. And we made, at that time, we made plays on the gender question, on communalism, on religious fundamentalism, on working class, on attack on the unions, and so on and so forth. So that journey continued. But then I want to now also talk about, so this particular photograph that you are seeing is from a play called Halla Bol. I want to start by talking about this. I want to also take a little pause as well to talk about a very, very important moment in Janam's organizational and creative history. So in 1988, there was a massive strike, All India industrial strike, which was very successful, and Janam performed Chakka Jam to sort of in support of that strike. And when the strike was over, the same play Chakka Jam was sort of reworked a little bit, and it was called Halla Bol. So on 1st of January, when we were performing this play, Halla Bol, which talks about industrial workers and their lives and their demands, in an outskirt, in an area which is at the outskirt of New Delhi, Ghaziabad, uh, our group was attacked by the local goons, who were also, some of them were also factory, small level factory owners. And in that attack on the group, our founder member, Safdar Hashmi, was murdered. Priyanka, you can go to the next slide. Safdar was one of our founder members. He was also the one of the most skilled and artistic and creative person. He was also one of the main organizers of the group. At that time, he was the convener of the group. So in that attack, Safdar was brutally beaten up, and the next day, on 2nd of January 1989, he died in the hospital. So that became like one of the moments when Janam sort of, it was an organization and a creative setback for us. And what happened that, on 3rd January 1989, there were Sabda's funeral, there were a lot of people from all walks of life, workers, trade unionists, artists, students, government, employees, and so on and so forth. They participated in his last journey, in his funeral, and also the ordinary citizens. So this sort of gave us energy to continue our work. And because our performance was interrupted 2 days ago, Janam as a group decided to go back to the same spot on 4th of January 1989, and at the same spot Janam completed its performance, the same performance that it was doing on 1st of January. So that was sort of, that becomes a kind of a very important moment in our history. But as I said, that returning to the same site where the killing happened and the play was interrupted, it also gave us why it is inscribed as one of the most significant moments in our history. Of course, because we lost one of our comrades, very very important comrade in the group, but also it going back and performing also gave the group the strength and the collective identity to the group, and the group decided to continue its work. And since then on, every year 1st January, Janam goes back to the same place and do this program, which is Safdar Hashmi Shahadat Divas, the Martyrdom Day. And we organize it with the local trade union, the Red Flag Trade Union. It's a joint program. We do a cultural program. There is also the union leaders come and give talk to the people, give speeches. We also perform. We also invite other people to commemorate Safdar's memory, but also to commemorate what he stood for and what since then Janam has stood for. So it's a sort of also a celebration of his life, and local residents also come to that space. So and in the month of December, we also do a lot of programs, and which are lead up to the 1st January program, and basically to reaffirm, and many other artists also come and perform in that space to reaffirm their solidarity between the working people and the artists. So that becomes a very very important sort of day in Janam's history. And since then, since 1989, Janam has experimented with a lot of performance spaces, audiences, grammar of even within the aesthetics of street theater. We have experimented with a lot of different kinds of performances. We do poetry readings, we do visual storytelling, cantastoria. We also sing songs, so on and so forth. And from 1973 to now, we have about 109 street plays in our repertoire. and about 17 stage plays. And besides this, there are other sort of performances. So that's the larger sort of a very brief history about Janams and how it started and what have been the impulses behind our work. So I want to finish this section here, and if there are more questions, I'm happy to take it after the second section is over. I am going to ask Priyanka to play a very short excerpt from one of our first plays, Machine. This is a performance that we did many years ago in one of the Delhi University colleges. So it's not in a working class area, but this is the video that we wanted to show, and that is what was available. Just to give you an idea about the form, the aesthetics, sound, the sort of dialogues, the dramaturgy, performance, and so on. And then Brijesh will talk about Machine in a little bit more detail. Priyanka, can you play this?
जी हाँ, ये है मशीन, लोहे की मशीन, कारखाने की मशीन। मशीन का है एक मालिक और बहुत से पुर्जे यानी कि मजदूर। दिन भर चलती है ये और रात को भी देती है बहुत कुछ, लगातार तरह तरह का सामान, तरह तरह की आराइशें। है ना बहुत खूब, देखने में छोटी सी पर काम धेनु की बहन नहीं, देखने वालों के लिए पहेली सी और कामगारों की सहेली सी। क्या कहा आपने? किसने बनाया इसे? जी आपने, आपने, उन्होंने और मैंने भी। यानी इस मशीन को जिन्होंने बनाया वो आप और हमारे जैसे इंसान थे, हमारे ही पुरखे, पर बड़े ही विकट। उन्होंने जी और जान से बनाया था इसे और बड़े इत्मीनान से बनाया था इसे। सदियों की मेहनत है इस मशीन की जड़ में। खटखटाखट, खटखटाखट, खटखटाखट।
That was the sound of machine that you just heard. It was 1978. Emergency had just been over. Kaumita has mentioned about the dictatorial rule of Mrs. Indira Gandhi, where all civil liberties, all civil rights were suspended. And a new government came into power in 1978. And people had great hopes. But what they got instead was Industrial Relations Bill. A blatantly anti-trade union law was passed. Trade unions were up in arms. A rally was called in Delhi. And prior to the rally, a convention was going to be held in Delhi. Convention just became over. And a group of 6 young men and women, 1 woman probably, in black t-shirts, they entered the arena and they started making this sound. Koo, shik, koo, shik, koo, shik. And for 2 to 3 minutes, this sound carried on. And then people started looking at what they're doing. And it little bit people settled and then the play started. And for next 12, 13 minutes, they just watched, mesmerized what was happening. This was Machine, our first street play. It was loosely based on an incident which had happened in outskirts of Delhi, where in a factory called Herring India Limited, workers were demanding 2 little demands. One was of a canteen and where they could just heat up their food, and one was of a cycle stand where they could park their cycles. But they were fired upon by the goons of honors and the police, and 3 workers died. And from that incident, Janam made this play, a schematically written play depicting the class relations in a capitalist society. But its language was absolutely lyrical, as you heard in what Mala was speaking. It was such lyrical language. And the play, after 45 years, we still do this play and it still works. So this was one of our first plays on working class theme. Priyanka, can we have the next slide? So this is after 45 years, we're still doing this play and it goes on. So working class theme are one of the important themes that come in our plays again and again. Next, please. With changing times, contents, aesthetics, and treatment of our plays on working class issues and themes have also changed. In 1980s, the trade union movement gathered strength. By the end of 80s, in 88, as Kamita talked about, the 7-day strike was called by Delhi trade union CITU. And we prepared this play called Chakka Jam, block the road, or we can say stop the machine. It was a play which was episodic in nature, though it was made in play within play fashion. And we performed this play in various areas in support of the strike. The trade unionists said that the play had a major role in the success of the strike. We don't really believe it, because we all know the success of strike is probably because of the strength of the trade union. But yes, play had a major role in keeping the spirits high. Post the strike, Janam modified the play to make it into Halla Bol, which was depicting the story after the strike, and that's when we were attacked, and Safdar Hashmi, our convener, organizer par excellence, activist, creative genius, and member of Communist Party of India, Marxist, died. He was killed. Post 1988, we had to regroup and make our new plays. And by that time in 90s, we saw that the socialist bloc had gone away, and there was attack of neoliberalism, and the new economic policies in India came up, and the things changed. The unions were not as strong as earlier. It was in that time that the unions were saying that these policies are because of American imperialism, this is because of the assault of imperialism. But the worker could not see imperialism. So literally we translated this statement into our playing strategy, and we made this play called Sangharsh Karenge Jeetenge. In English, we can call it We Shall Fight, We Shall Win, where we brought in this character of imperialism who was dressed up as Uncle Sam. But this character is not visible to the workers. Though he is visible to the rulers, he is visible to the capitalist class, and also he is visible to an actor, to a character called Sangharsh, the struggle, who is born in the play. And at the climax of the play, the struggle literally exposes imperialism by derobing it. So that was the way we started showing neoliberalism's assault. Literally, if we can look at the early plays in 90s, it can be read as assault of neoliberalism on working class in India. By that time, when the neoliberalism the assault was happening, the rights of the workers were being diluted, and we made plays which were depicting this impact on the working class as well as on the capitalist class. Next, Priyanka. So in 1997, we made this play called Those Who Did Not Believe. It was from the point of view of the strike breakers. The play was constructed as a story in a closed room, where a story is told and then the actors discuss the story. And at the end, they decide, oh, we are not going to remain inside. We are also going to participate in the strike. And the play ended with asking people, should we remain inside or should we go out? So it involved the audience. But it was from the point of view of the strike breakers. It's around the same time that we did another play called Andhera Aftab Mangega, The Darkness Will Beget Dawn. This play showed different working class, young workers, as opposed to the old workers. Old workers were dejected, but the young workers, they are full of hope, but they don't believe in organization. So this is what was the impact on the working class. Also, we could see in the play the impact on the capitalist class, where we saw the son of the factory owner who has been trained somewhere in MBA in Australia, and he comes back, he does not have any belief in welfare capitalism. So this became the part of another aspect of impact of neoliberalism on working class and impact on the capitalist class as well. By the end of millennium, next slide, please. The ruling classes in India had literally, they were welcoming American imperialism, WTO and IMF conditionalities, everything with open arms. And it was around 2000 that President of the United States, then President of the United States, visited India, and Jana Natya Manch came up with this play called Not Acceptable. The conditionalities are not acceptable to us. And that was Nahi Kabool in 2000. In the early century or millennium, that is first quarter of the 21st century, we made plays which were depicting the sharpening attack on the rights of the worker, on the right to unionize. So we came up with two plays. One of them is Ye Hum Kyun Sahe, that is Enough is Enough, and another one is our most recent play on the working class, that is the Unseen Stories. So both of them used documentary elements. In the first one, we used real testimonies of the working class. And in the second one, we used letters written by unions to the labor office, and we juxtaposed them with two intersecting stories. And those two intersecting, the play was built like a murder mystery. But the play also did another thing, that was it foregrounded the women workforce, which was increasing in industry. And it also talked about the attitude of the women workforce to unionization, and critically looked at the attitude of the unions to women's demands too. This particular facet resonates with our plays on women's question. So from here we go on to the other theme, that is how Janam's play depicted women and how that changed with time. So in 1980, for Working Women's Conference, we made our iconic play Aurat, Woman, a play which has been translated into many languages and which has been performed in Bangladesh, Pakistan also. This play covered women's life from childhood to school to college to marriage to workplace. And it begins with a dramatic, what we are seeing is a dramatic rendition of Iranian poetess Marzia Uskui's poem, which was translated by Safdar Hashmi. I am a mother, a daughter, a sister, a good wife, a woman, to which Maulay Shri Hashmi, whom you can see in this picture, young Maulay Shri Hashmi, later added a lover and a friend too. It covered every facet of women's life. It was episodic play which dealt with different facets of women's life. Next, please. Over the time, many plays on women's issue exploring different aspects of women's life have been made by Jana Natya Manch. This one is another one called Go Boluthi, She Spoke Up, which we made in 2000. And it was a string of 3 stories which covered a girl child's aspiration, the first one. Second one was about a woman in a middle class family. Third one was about a woman in factory and also in union. The last one, in fact, very interestingly, the whole story came up after our discussion with one of the leaders of the women's movement in Delhi. And when we asked her what should be the issue that we should take up in this last story, and she immediately came up with a demand that this is very common, that is the demand of a separate toilet for women in workplace. And believe me, wherever we have gone and performed in all kinds of spaces, all kinds from schools, colleges to factory areas, everywhere when we talk about this demand, this is one demand which resonates with everyone. And that was verbality. We also explored next when the cases of violence against women were increasing. Violence against women has always been there, but sometimes it starts coming to notice. And we made a play in 2005 called Many Faces of Violence. And in 2013, after Delhi rape case, which we call as Nirbhaya rape case, Jana Natya Manch reworked display, and we performed display in many occasions. The play used stories from mythology as a prologue, underlining the discrimination against women as a traditionally sanctioned phenomena. Religion as a facilitator for this discrimination was evident when we heard many religious preachers actually in the aftermath of Delhi riot case giving insensitive statements. So these are broadly, this is the plays on women's issues. Another issue that we have, the major theme that we have taken up in many of our plays has been around the discourse of communalism and secularism. Early in 1978-79, after Aligarh riots, Aligarh is a small town near Delhi in North India, which is famous for its university and was then famous for its lock industry. So there were riots in Aligarh, and after that we made this play which talked about Hindu-Muslim brotherhood, basically, and how this was sought to be broken by the industrialists who wanted to use strategy of divide and rule. This Hindu-Muslim brotherhood theme was part of most of our plays on communalism versus secularism debate. In 1984, when we actually did a play called Abduction of Brotherhood, this was in the aftermath of Delhi Sikh riots, and till about 88, 89, we were doing all these plays which were like talking about Hindu-Muslim brotherhood. But on 6th of December 1992, when we were performing one of our plays called Don't Divide the Human Being, Mat Baanto Insaan Ko, in Jawaharlal Nehru University, it's then that we got this news that the Babri Mosque, a 15th century structure in holy town of Ayodhya, has been demolished by Hindu fundamentalists. That was the instance which transformed the secular fabric in India. It also changed how we depict communalism in our plays. From then onwards, we foregrounded the idea of Hindu fundamentalism in our plays. And this play that you are looking at, Sab Pe Sahe Bharpoor Hai Ji, The God is Everywhere, which we did in 1993 January, just 1 month after Babri Mosque was demolished. Though this was based on the life and times of his Bhakti poet of 18th century, Sant Paltu Das. It was in the prologue, we showed a Hindu fundamentalist who was on attack. And this was followed by the gathering of strength by the right-wing forces. And by 1998, they were in power. And in 2002, Gujarat carnage happened. And in the aftermath of Gujarat carnage, we made this play, which literally it juxtaposed news cuttings, images from news with the farcical, and also the poetry written by eminent poets in response to the Gujarat carnage. They were interspersed with farcical scenes between right-wing ideologues. And we created this play called The Heart Desires More, which was a very sharp critique of right-wing politics. Over the years, with strengthening of right-wing forces in power and permeation of its ideology of hate in the society, the spaces for free speech, especially in the areas, is shrinking. It becomes very difficult to name the aggressors, the Hindu fundamentalists, when we go and perform. So we need to find various ways of addressing this ideology, this assault of hate that is happening. Our focus has shifted back to now again talking about strengthening the syncretism that was part of our culture. So in our latest play, Sanjire Chadariya, the common secular fabric, we talk of friendships, coexistence, mutual dependence amongst various communities. And we just don't name the aggressor, because that helps us taking the play to the areas. So these were the three broad themes that I have talked about. But apart from these themes, there are various other themes that we have explored. I won't be talking about them in detail, but I hope that when the question answer session, we can maybe come up with them. So as part of our anti-imperialist and international solidarity, we have made plays in solidarity with Cuba, against Cuban embargo. We have made plays against war on Iraq. This one is War 2003. We have made plays in support of Palestine. Next one, please. In fact, we did this presentation. This is a visual essay with poetry. It's called Ujle Safeed Kabutar in Hindi. Basically, this was a translation of Nisar Kabbani's poetry called They Accuse Me of Terrorism, and Mahmoud Darwish long poem called Under Siege. With this presentation, poetry presentation with a visual essay. And also we had a major collaboration with the Freedom Theatre of Jenin, with whom we did this Freedom Jatha and went to many cities in India, and we made this play called Hamesha Samidha, and which I'm hoping that we will definitely have questions around this international solidarity thing, as well as we have done plays on various other issues, and I'm hoping that we will be able to talk about them in the question answer session. So I hope I haven't taken more time than was allotted for me. I'll now hand over to Rebecca for conducting the session further. Thank you.
Thank you, Komita and Brijesh. Those were fantastic presentations and amazing images. So we've got a few minutes now. We're just breaking up the session slightly, so there are more presentations to come on other aspects of the work. But if there are any questions or responses that people have at this point, Francesco has raised his hand. Francesco?
Thanks, Rebecca. And thanks for this presentation. It was extremely interesting. So I would have two questions. I don't know if there is time to address them both. I'll just try to be short in asking them, and then naturally understand that time is never too much. So the first question, you have talked about a range of topics and broad themes that you have explored in different performances. And another thing I found very interesting was about tackling some very relevant aspects of identity intersectionality in India. So doing some performances that you said were more about women, some performances that were more about international matters for the Muslim community. One aspect that deals with caste and caste discrimination, I was wondering, well, how do you tackle that topic? And if you think that's an important category to tackle, how to do it, well, how to do it effectively. The second question, I've noticed that there are a lot of different faces in the pictures you have showed us. So my understanding is that this is productions that have spanned over 50 years and would have been realized with quite a big group of people by now. So as I understand that your creative process also involves using a lot of different formats, I was wondering if you have any way of training performers, workshopping with them before sort of putting together a certain piece, or if you have certain things that like everybody have to do to be part of the company before, well, getting on the streets and the stages. Thank you.
Pamita, will you like to take up this the last letter in Shiksha Ki Dod?
Yeah, thank you, Francesco, for your question. Very quickly, we have produced street plays as well as stage plays around the question of caste. And in terms of the form that we have used, I mean, when we made our play in 2004, which is called Shambhuk Vat, we actually took up a story, a very, very, really short story from this massive epic Hindu text, Sanskrit Hindi text, Ramayana. So we took up a story from there, and then we sort of brought in more elements and the debates around the question of caste. And then in the later years, we, in fact, more recently, I don't know if you know about this particular incident that in 2015 December, 2016 January, a PhD student in one of the universities, central universities in India, committed suicide. His name was Rohit Vemulla, and he came from a marginalized caste section. So what we did is that before he before he sort of took his life, he wrote a letter, a note, which became public. So we took that letter and we sort of interspersed the text of that letter with poetry written around the question of caste by poets in India, and we did a reading performance, which was a reading and also the letters of the ministry, which was written to the university to subjugate this particular student. So we brought in different kinds of text and spoke about that. And then later 2018, we also did a play. We invited somebody from outside, Abhishek Majumdar, who wrote and directed a play with us. Again, taking up a fictional story and set it up in a Buddhist kingdom and talk about the question of caste and what is the role of an artist in a society. How does the state sort of oppress the artist who comes from a marginalized section? So what I'm trying to say by giving these examples, that there have been different ways through which, in terms of forms and content, that we have responded to the question of caste. Also, even if even like Brijesh spoke about certain particular plays on gender, but if you look at our plays on working class as well, the question of caste and question of gender, they keep on reappearing. Maybe that is not the central part of the narrative, but there are intersections that are continuously they are there and they are present. So these are some of the ways through which playing with the dramaturgy, playing with the whole idea of form and so on, we have been using using narratives from mythology, or sometimes fictitious tales. We have sort of tried to brought in these questions to the foreground.
Also, there was a play that we did, which was called The Race for Education, which actually talked about the inequalities in education and how the marginalized section actually they cannot get what is their due. In that play was also there, and this Shambhuk Vad is primarily not a street play. It's more of a proscenium play, and That's Kamita talked about that. And it not only brought various different stories, but it had so many. The stories were from our myths, but the resonance that we were hearing were all the time contemporaries. So that's what I want to underline. As far as the training, etc., goes, the second question that you talked about, yes, we do that in the sense that before every play that we take up, there are training session, and sometimes we do this training. We call people to have some workshop with us. Recently, we had a workshop on movement and dance, and we have workshop on songwriting. We had workshop on basically script writing as well, and also say a workshop on acting, which one of our own. So we use our resources from within the group, and we also sometimes invite people from outside. So yes, the training is definitely a part before the making of the play, when we invite some director from outside, and also in between we have these training programs for our actors.
Just to add one little point to this question of training, that the training is also for us sort of divided into two major, not maybe not talked about so much, but two major parts. One is also to be able to understand the issue, to also have this kind of a quote unquote understanding of the movement, for which we also invite people from the trade unions, from who are working. So for example, if we are talking about labor codes, then we will call a trade union comrade, and he will speak or she will speak to us about that. So that is one part of the training. And then other skill based training that Brijesh is talking about. And actually, Francesco, our group is not very big, because you are seeing images from the 70s to the present. People keep on coming, and then there is a core group that has been there, but people keep coming and going. So at a given point of time, we usually have 20 to like 15 to 20 people, in which some people have been around for a long time. So it seems that there have been a lot of people. Have come to us because we have been around for so long. Some stay, some don't. Some have been there for a long time. Yeah, I think there is another hand raised.
So Dave, do you want to go? We've only got a couple of minutes left for this bit, so go on, Dave.
I'd like to ask how much of your funding comes from trade unions, and does any funding come from Marxist political parties or left-wing political parties? Thank you.
I'm actually going to talk about our funding structures or resource mobilization at the end of the presentation, but just to give like one line answer, that in India, the relationship in terms of financial support from the trade union is not really there. So it's very different. The relationship between a group like us and the trade union is very different from how it works out in the context of the UK. So trade unions do not pay us. Rather, the trade unions are very, because many of them are whole-timers, they are working full-time. So they are also not paid. The unionists are not really paid by to conduct the trade union. And we don't take money from the party, from the Communist Party. I mean, so our funding structures are a little different than how it works in your context or in other parts of the world. But I'll be speaking a little bit more in detail at the end of this presentation.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I don't know how much money we get from the trade unions in this country, to be honest. It's sort of like something that's changed over time. But yeah, very interested in seeing that bit of your presentation. Are there any final quick questions? Or if not, we can move on to the next section.
So hello, my name is Priyanka. I've been in Jana Natya Manch for more than 6 years now, and I am here to talk about spaces and audiences. Let's talk about spaces first. When we think of performance spaces in proscenium theatre, we think of closed spaces like auditorium, black box, and such. When we say street theatre, the space is different. That is the streets. which are essentially public spaces. In an auditorium, audience comes with the intention of experiencing a play, whereas in street theater, the audience sees something happening and stops to watch. We largely perform in areas where people live and work, like in marketplaces, as you can see in this photograph, and lower middle class colonies, industrial areas, etc. I just want to give you some context. In some densely populated regions, especially in slums where the houses are small and people are generally outside their houses, it is easier to convince them to come out and watch our performances. However, in middle class and upper middle class localities where there are big houses and fewer people on the roads, people do not easily come out of their houses to watch our play. So, what are the kind of spaces where we perform? We perform, as I said, we perform in industrial areas, slums, etc. Like you see in this photograph, it's a factory gate where we are performing. This factory is closed now, but we used to perform here. We also perform in schools, colleges, and offices. The areas where we perform, we cannot call them like a performance space. For example, a park. In a park, children play, people walk around, sit together, and talk. When we go to these spaces for a specific duration of time, they then become performance space. People who are living there, working there, became our audience. It is as if we temporarily transform the nature of the space. It's a kind of cultural intervention, I say. Like in this photo, in this park, there's a statue of Lenin in the center of the park, and we go there every year on 22nd April to celebrate Lenin's birth anniversary. So people usually come here for exercise and talking, mostly these kind of stuff. For every year for 2 hours, this space becomes a performance space. So if we see physically, the space where we perform changes. Usually, where we rehearse, the surface is flat. When we go outside to perform, the nature of ground is different in different areas. The size and the shape of acting area is never fixed. For example, I remember in one of the places we have performed on a slope. It affects our walk, our style of acting. Sometimes the space is too small. Sometimes it's too large. Sometimes it's too crowded, too noisy. The blocking and choreography that we plan for our plays keeps on evolving depending on where we are performing. When we rehearse, we imagine to perform for a three-sided audience. So we take a back and we perform for a three-sided audience. But however, in reality, sometimes the audience is on two sides, sometimes they are on one side, and sometimes they are on all four. They are on all four sides, as you can see in this photograph. In a metropolitan city like New Delhi in India, the nature of space also changes with changing times. One of the reasons for this is that the kind of spaces where we can perform have decreased because of factors like construction of buildings, malls, migration. Like you're seeing in this photograph, this is an industrial area where we used to perform, but now the space doesn't exist because in this space there is a huge flyover and a very big metro station that have come up. Factories are shut down and banquet halls have come up at their place. Economic changes have led to demographic and geographic changes in the city. In the last couple of decades, another thing has happened. There have been attempts to suppress dissent of any kind. In the 80s, Jana Natya Manch could perform in spaces in the center of city. Like in this photograph, Janam is performing during a big rally in front of India Gate, which is like the city center. But now these spaces have become inaccessible. As in the name of security, state machinery doesn't allow performances in these spaces. We cannot perform here because we will never get permission. Security is used as an excuse, and nobody is allowed to question that. This is a fact, but it's also true that these concerns about security and the necessity of police permission is limited to only certain parts of the city. In the places that lie outside the margins, like resettlement colonies, slums, factory areas, nobody cares about the permission. This is because government is not interested in the lives of those people who live there. These areas don't have access to even the basic amenities, and are often not even considered part of the state by those in power. Over the years, number of slums have increased and they have become more densely populated, like you're seeing in this photograph. Okay, so another aspect about space that I want to share is that in street theater we don't really have a backstage. So we when we go to perform, we put our props on a rug, either on the ground, either on two sides of the performance, either on one side. But sometimes the areas are too congested that we have to find another solution. So we either hang our clothes on the cycle or a bike, or keep them on the back of a parked car. So this happens when we go in the areas. Okay, so when we talk about audiences, people of all gender, classes, and ages watch our plays. When we perform in schools and colleges and conferences, we get a homogeneous audience that has come to watch our play, as you can see here. But when we perform in residential colonies, marketplaces, parks, we get more heterogeneous crowd. People are less settled. They're not there to watch our plays. They are there to do their daily chores. Compared to industrial areas, as you can see in this previous photo, more women and children watch our plays in residential spaces. And sometimes there is no space for the audience, so audience make their own space. So people are doing, as you can see in this photograph, people are doing their stuff and we are performing on one side, and they have stopped doing what they are doing and they are watching their plays, sitting and standing wherever they are finding the places. Our plays are received differently by different people. People react to things in their own unique ways. Sometimes people agree and sometimes they disagree with our performances. After our performances, sometimes people come and talk to us. They talk about their life also, they talk about plays also. Sometimes these things also happen. We always remember one thing: our audience, the people, have more knowledge of their daily struggles than we do. We go there, perform for them to establish a connection, to be part of their struggles, because their struggles ultimately affect us. Our plays are artistic renditions of their lived experience. We also try to raise questions about whether there can be different ways to look at their realities. Overall, the idea is to make the play enjoyable. This wholesome enjoyment stays with the audience. They may or this at that moment may or may not connect with their lives, but it stays with them, and later on they might take something out of or not out of it. So the enjoyable experience should be there to stay with them. During the pandemic, we have also explored another space, that is the digital space. So we have produced a play for only for Zoom medium, that is the Great Indian Global Show. But most of our audiences to whom we perform cannot join this medium because of lack of facilities like mobile phones and internet. So as soon as the lockdown is lifted, our main primary thing is to go back to areas and spaces and perform. So, like, if we talk about participation of audience, in every work of art there is a participation of audience, irrespective of whether they speak out loud at that moment or not. There is an engagement with the audience. in some of our plays, this engagement is more active. For example, when we do repeat shows in the area, so when we go to a certain area to perform, we usually do 2 to 3 shows back to back. So when we go from one spot to the other, the children usually follows us from one show to another, and they follows us by reciting the lines of the plays. The lines of the play stays with them. Something stays with the children of that area. So that stays with them. So we also perform in front of factories during their lunch hour or after the shift is over. We also perform in front of office area. We don't we are not able to do this on our own. We are able to do this because of the strong union presence. They invite us and support us, and with their help we became part of the larger movement. Over the years, we have developed long-lasting relationship with mass organization and unions, and this relationship has sustained us till now and will sustain us in the coming years. So Komita will speak in more detail about this relationship with our unions and mass organization. And over to you, Komita.
Thank you. Very, very quickly, just to talk about these two very, very significant and important aspects of our work is the relationship with the trade unions, as Priyanka is talking about. And there, I can see that in the audience also we have our comrades to sort of, who are working as artists and as trade unionists, but also working with the trade unions. So when we go to these areas, our connection, the connection with the audience and the space that Priyanka has just talked about, is actually gets established through the local organizations that are working in the area. So we never go on the streets and start performing. It's always that some local unions, usually the red flag unions, women's organizations, students organizations, or youth organizations, they invite us to become part of their movement, of their struggle. So, and working in the area and mobilizing the community of workers around a specific issue is it is their major responsibility to mobilize people. So what do we then, as an activist theatre group, what do we do? So another again, going back to one of Safdar Hashmi's sort of quote, that he said that the basic idea that what cultural activism or a group like Janam can do is to agitate people and to mobilize them behind the fighting organizations. And it is actually these fighting organizations who are working, I would say, 24/7 with the workers and understanding their struggles, that actually also provide us with the strength and also sort of help us to represent, or rather present, these daily struggles. And so what is implicit in this statement, that it is to agitate people and mobilize them, is that theater, or let's say any other art form, we thoroughly believe that alone cannot change the world, but it is this alliance with the people who are working at the grassroots level and with the communities, that it can actually show alternative perceptions about the world that exists, that what is a way to look at your own conditions. As Priyanka said, that we are in no, we don't think that we know about their lives and their struggles better because we are artists and we come from a certain class and other privileges, but it is them who actually help us to understand what is going around in the world in terms of social and economic oppression. And we just try to sort of present those stories which raise questions, and it is through these constant engagements, because we go to certain areas. Priyanka just mentioned that we do, in an evening, we do about 2 to 3 shows back to back. Our shows are usually from the length of the duration of the show is from 20 minutes to sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes even longer, but usually that's the average duration of every show. So we do show at one place, we pick up our stuff, go to another spot in the same area, go to the third spot. So there is not really a time to engage with the audience in terms of dialogue, but while we are picking up our stuff, while we are packing our stuff, our properties audiences do come to us and tell us about, whether they like the play, or sometimes they just come up with questions or their problems. So I remember once we were doing a play about the public distribution system, rations system, and one woman came and she said that, can you please help me make my ration card? I don't have a ration card. And at that time, what we do is that we ask them to contact the local trade union comrade who is present at the spot to get in touch, so that they can take up that issue and help them with whatever local issues they are facing. So this continuous engagement and the process of collaboration is actually, strengthen this idea about sort of working together, artists and the relationship between the mass organization for this larger working class collective movement. And this has been the case from the very beginning. Even in the 70s, when we started off, this relationship has always been there, and we thoroughly believe that our work has sustained itself. Priyanka has also mentioned it, Rijesh has mentioned it in a certain in their own ways. We have been able to sustain ourselves because of this continuous relationship with the working class movement. Sometimes when we make plays, we do previews and we call our comrades from the trade unions and we say that, give us comments, and we go to these different sort of audiences that we perform. So this particular photograph is from a bank union that we are doing, and it's the same play that Vijay talked about, Not Acceptable. We also perform for other unions. Priyanka, can you just keep on going to the next slide? So this is one of the plays that we did for a protest at a protest site where women scheme workers were on demanding minimum wages and better working conditions, and we went and we performed. We have performed for the Railways Union. I know in UK right now the Railway Union has been sort of struggling and agitating for a long time. We have performed for Teachers Union. We have performed for airport union, and this collaboration often also takes different shapes. So for example, in 2014 we did a collaborative working class festival with the local trade union, with the CITU, which is a red flag union affiliated to the Communist Party of India, Marxist. And we did this working class festival for 3 days at the same spot where the attack in 1989 happened, and we keep on going there every 1st of January. We did it in February at that time. So what I'm trying to say is that this collaboration or our solidarity with the working class movement is sort of a continuous strength, provides continuous strength for our work. This is a photo every year we also go to May Day rally and so on and so forth. Priyanka, can you go to the next slide? So just coming to the last aspect very, very quickly, and then we can go to the breakout room, is that the funding structure for us, our audiences have supported us. When we go to these areas after every performance, we pass the hat. Sometimes when we ask the audience that please give us donation as much as you can, as much as you will, and they come up with whatever they can give. Even in areas, even children go back and ask for like really maybe 2 cents or 50 cents or so on and so forth. So this is asking for donations after every performance has been one of our most important ways of raising funds. And because we have been around for so long, that is why it has been it has become like a cycle now. But that's not the only way through which we sustain ourselves financially. We also have friends, we also have sympathizers to whom we write, every on specific occasions or every now and then, to ask them for funds. Sometimes when we are doing particular events or some big program, like for Halla Bol festival that I just showed you the poster of, or the Freedom Jatha for the Palestine, for Palestinian cause, we raised funds. We gave call, we wrote to specific people and we asked that if you would like to contribute to that. So there have been different ways. One of the major ways also through which we have been able to mobilize our resources and sustain our work is that there are a lot of friends and people who have been familiar with our work over the last several years, and they come and help us in kind. We also do some collaborations which are sort of, like recently we did a collaboration with a design school based in New Delhi, and their students created, it became their college project, and they created an exhibition for us, a mobile exhibition that tries to encapsulate 50 years of Janam's work. And so it was kind of a creative collaboration. I mean, and we also raised funds for that. So there are several ways through which we are able to sort of sustain ourselves, because on principle we do not go to big corporates, we do not ask funds from the government, we don't apply for funds. In any case, I don't think a group like ours will ever get a funding from from the state. But we deliberately don't raise funds through these conventional, or the big bourgeoisie or the petty bourgeoisie sort of those sort of resources. So that is largely what are the different types of different aspects of our work. It's just a really, you can actually follow us on Facebook, on Instagram also, to get regular updates and to also know what we have been up to in all these years. Yeah, just to before we, or maybe no, we just had a short video that we created to commence the celebration of our 50 years last year, which I think we will show right at the end. It's just a 3 minutes video. So that's all from us. Rebecca?
Thank you for that. The rest of these amazing presentations. Thanks ever so much, Priyanka and Komita. So now we'd like to invite you to split off into breakout rooms. So Chris is going to organize that in a moment. We'd like you to think about something quite specific. So we've kind of broken this down into 2 questions, but you can respond to whatever part you feel most inclined to. So this is a question that kind of came from Janam. I'm just sort of chairing this bit. So one is, what about Janam's work resonates with you? So it's very simple. Is there something about Janam's work in particular that resonates with you? Maybe building on that, how does their work resonate with your own work, maybe, or your own context, what you're doing in your own context, wherever that is, and whatever work you're doing? So you can feel free to answer both of those, or one or other of those questions. Right, well, it would be great to hear back now from the groups. Is there somebody from group 1 that wants to tell us about what your discussion entailed?
Yeah, we did just talk around just how interesting it all is, and yeah, one thing that really resonated with Clara was the fact that one of your members, Janam, was murdered in the 1980s. I mean, that really does take you straight to the center of everything and how much it means. We were talking about the social and theatrical methodology, and about all the different companies that exist in India, and how you all know each other and sort of interact, although you don't have a proper network. But you know each other and you exchange ideas and performances. You just have different levels of engagement with each of them. Yeah, we are amazed that you're still going after 50 years and you're not funded by any institution, that you just spread a cloth and collect the money, and that's how you get half of your what you need to run. It used to be more. We were talking about the digital era and how that there is a place for that, a place for digital performance, but Janam doesn't find it at all a competition, but more complementary. It's just a different type. And yeah, we note that digital doesn't guarantee attention, whereas if you're actually in the street, you're much likely to get hooked in and stay the course. And as Marla said, people who come to see their plays don't usually drift off again. Yeah. Yes, she said you cannot undermine the experience of watching a human perform. Yes, it's so much better in real life, isn't it?
That sounds like a really rich discussion. How about group 2?
So thank you so much for this section. It's so great to talk about this Janam works. And we talked basically, we started with the difficulties of dealing with theater doing and other jobs at the same time, trying to survive with another profession. And it has much to do with our situation in Brazil. It resonates. I proposed this issue because even though I'm a professional actor, I can't survive from theater, basically, normally in Brazil. So actors in Brazil, almost every actor has another profession. And so when you say, oh, you pass the hat, you're an amateur group, in Brazil, it's very similar to people who works in theater. And we talked about how it's difficult to find time to perform, to rehearse, and how they struggle against that with all their hearts and all your strength. And it's very beautiful, all this struggle. And also we are talking about, because of this context also, people coming and going, and in the long run, you have a group with 50 years, with people during on the journey, on the whole journey, but also people that came yesterday, and people that were in the group in the 80s, and that's very interesting too. And another issue was how do you handle with horizontal decisions, the creation of the dramaturgy, all that in a democratic way. And we discussed a little bit about this, and also the recruitment process. At the end, we're talking about this, and how there is non-recruitment process. You're only, Priyanka was telling us that you only have to give your time. So if you have time to give us, you're in. And it's a very interesting recruitment process.
Thanks a lot, Gustavo. And lastly, the third group.
It was lovely having an interaction with, especially like I had the privilege of 3 people from Janam. So I had this privilege, and even to hear Tanya talk. Yeah, who? To hear Tanya talk because she's in our drama society as well. So it was very relatable, whatever she talked, and even her whole experience about she being a student in Delhi was very relatable. And even I got some insights upon some political topics on which we as theater groups can talk upon and bring a change in the society, which was very insightful. So it was a lovely experience.
Thanks, Hashita. Anybody else from this group just want to touch on, like, I know you had such an interesting question, Hashita, about like top topics, like important topics. So you were looking for some guidance with that or whatever. Do you want to speak a little bit about what was said there, or does anybody else want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so basically I talked about how theater as a medium brings together people from different social status and brings out the issues that people face as individual And we also talked about some of the topics that we could bring through the medium of theater. And Ashok sir also gave us many opinions about how we can raise women's issues, for instance, and create awareness about that. So it gave us a lot many ideas to work upon.
Wonderful. And yeah, I I just want to say I empathize with what Harshita was communicating there about being in a session with members of this group, because I also feel slightly starstruck. It's like a very it's a very like privileged place to be. Komita, Priyanka and Brijesh, do you want to say anything in response to anything that's happened? Do you want to like say anything to close this? I have a few kind of closing remarks. We're a couple of minutes to the end of the session now. I just wanted to invite you some space if you want to say anything at this point, but you don't have to.
Mala, I think, wants to say something.
No, I just want to say one very small thing, just occurred to me. You know, very often people think that theatre, and especially street theatre, because it is at one level, you know, states itself that we are doing something, you know, consciously political. It's not simply to create awareness, because the moment you say it creates awareness, it affords the doer, that is us, the actors, the group, a status higher than the audience. And I'm sorry, I disagree with that. And I not only disagree, I actually reject that. The most important thing is that we are not there as superior beings simply because we have read 2.5 more books, or that we've been to college or not been to college. I haven't. But what I'm trying to say is that that's not the thing. I think what theatre does do is to be able to experience culturally the struggles that are happening around us. I think that's far more important. So actually, you see, anybody who comes to Janam, and I think it would be true. It certainly happened with me. And I can see it happening in the growth in other people, that it is a wonderful learning for even us. You know, obviously it has to be when we are going out in the audiences. It's you go and just see what is happening around you. That in itself is something that is actually much more educative for us than the so-called audiences whom we are not creating awareness. I think we are raising questions.
Yeah, what a fantastic thing to kind of to leave with in a way. And it reminds me of something I was reflecting on this weekend at a political rally I went to, which was that the process of making theatre for me in the past, I was interested in making theatre as a way to politicize people, but what I was reflecting on was how profoundly I was politicized by the process of trying to make political theatre, right? Which is like another way of thinking about what you're saying, similar to what you're saying in a sense. Amazing. I think we should draw to a close now, but because we've reached 6 o'clock, I just want to give another really, really heartfelt thanks to Jana Natya Manch, especially Komita, Brijesh, Priyanka, who have worked hard on this presentation and have given such a rich insight and generous insight into the group's work. And I'm really, really glad that we've recorded it. So hopefully this can be a resource that we can use like to just bring these rich insights to more people, basically. And then they can keep feeding back and teaching us in that process as well, perhaps. And also thank you to everybody that's here, including people that are involved in the project. So thank you very much to Chris for organizing this with me, and also Clara, Gustavo. Earlier we had Dave Chappell, Dave Rogers, who are partners on this project, Helen, who's also working on the project in an upcoming workshop. So it's lovely to see you, and just everybody that's been here. Very, very much appreciated. Do keep in touch. If anyone particularly wants to be added to the mailing list that isn't, to find out about more workshops that we've got coming up from different groups, please feel free to leave your email address in the chat or private message me your email address, or go to the website, which Chris has done it, amazing. Go to that website and you can go to the contact tab and then find how to email us. yeah, and we'll be uploading, as long as it's all right with Priyanka and co, we'll be uploading this to our website, or a link to it, so people can like access it if you want to watch it again or share it. But we can have a discussion about that. But we can we'll put as much as possible on the website about this session, basically beyond now. So yeah, thank you, and what a great learning.